Joining me now is Warren Stanyer. He's the chairman and CEO at ALX Resources. Great to see you again, Warren.
Nice to see you again, Mark. It's been a while.
Now, you've said that lithium is the real focus of your company right now, specifically the Hydro project in James Bay. And can you give us an update on what you're doing in terms of preparation and the work that's going on as you get ready to put boots on the ground this season and to look for more pegmatites and zero in on some more targets?
Well, it's a program of assembly right now. And as we announced this week, we've secured all the elements that we need: a geological team, Geo Squad out of Val d'Or, Quebec. We have a helicopter. We have a senior geologist, Robert Campbell, that's worked with us on other projects, uranium and nickel, who's also worked on spodumene outcrops in the Northwest Territories and in other places. So this is an exciting time when you finally realize, after all these months of waiting, that the snow's almost gone. And accommodations were a big factor here because you can't take anything for granted in these rush scenarios. What we learned is that a major camp, a base camp, was completely booked until October. It's called Mirage. The assumption was that we would stay there, but this is a lithium rush. So there's so many people clamoring for people, for products, for everything that we need. And we're very fortunate to have secured all of that.
Warren, we'll talk a little bit more about this lithium rush later on in our conversation and to get your take on it. Now, we did speak about 6 months ago, and I've seen some subsequent interviews with you, and you've been saying you're very excited about the spring-summer season. It's upon us now. At this stage of your development with the ALX, so what are you most excited about?
Well, being in lithium, I'm no stranger to it. I'm involved in another company in Nevada that has been a lithium explorer starting in 2015, 2016. The lithium, of course, goes through these cycles. It rises, it falls. In 2018, 2019, nobody wanted it again, So here we are in this green revolution time, and the lithium price rose accordingly, according to the demand. For us to be involved, I didn't want to be a spectator in ALX. Yes, we have good uranium properties and nickel properties and a copper property in Ontario and some gold properties. These are all great properties to own, but when investors are most interested in lithium at this time, it seemed that we had to become involved, and I'm glad that we are. It's brought a lot of focus from investors to the company. I think a lot of people are watching, and I'm looking forward to this program as a result.
You've said before that explorers are like detectives solving mysteries. So I'm wondering about your philosophy in terms of using the historical data that you have and then combining that with modern technologies such as drones, high resolution drones. So what are your views on that?
Well, this is a different animal. When I look at the historical data in Canada that's available, and a lot of it is from the huge exploration boom in the 1960s. And in those days, people would go out on the ground for a couple of months. They'd spend the entire summer prospecting, maybe flying a drill into somewhere. We don't quite do that these days. But one thing that data does for us, those explorers found a lot of little things, a lot of showings on surface. They weren't able to exploit them very well with their geophysics. They would try doing geophysics, but it didn't penetrate. It was maybe 50 meters or so. So they would drill a hole and miss the target that we see now is, say, 120 or 180 meters down, and just with some smatterings of a showing on surface. So this is the difference then and now. The tools that we have are better, the combination of their work, our tools. But in this lithium exploration scenario in James Bay at the Hydro Lithium project, we don't have as much information about lithium. There's a lot of information, and people mapped looking for sulfides. They were looking for gold. They were looking for base metals. Those are not necessarily coincident with lithium bearing pegmatites. You might be in the same area because there was some structural weaknesses that allowed the pegmatites to come. It allowed quartz to come with sulfides and fluids and all these things, these zones of weakness. So they can be coincident, but lithium was ignored. Lithium didn't matter. Sometimes if there was a strong showing, it might be mapped, say in the 50s or 60s. And I see some of the literature has those showings described, but we also find that the geological mapping in this area is not that good. There's a lot of, let's call it contouring, where if you have a granite over here and a granite over there, then it must be granite in the middle. And that's not necessarily so. So this is why this is so important for us to get on the ground, assess it for ourselves, because we can't necessarily rely on historical data for this project.
You've been part of discoveries before and some successful exits as well. So how would you say that those successes are informing what you call a pragmatic approach and a boots on the ground approach?
Well, the boots on the ground is the start. That's how you find something. For example, the Patterson Lake discovery, when ESO Uranium, which I was director of, and Fission Energy 50/50, we used modern tools to find radioactive or radiometric anomalies. These were buried uranium boulders up to 30% uranium. When we went on the ground, boots on the ground, dug them up. Okay, so now you've got something. But it wasn't like the world went crazy right away. We actually declined, ESO declined to 2 cents. And on a Friday, we rolled back to 20 cents, 10 for 1. No one could find us. Our new name was Alpha Minerals. The next day, there was a discovery. So all of that took from 2011, it was over a year before the discovery with a drill was made. So this is how there's a bit of a lag time in finding something significant, then realizing you're on the cusp of locating a new deposit, and then the M&A can follow, because that was quite a jousting match with what became Fission Uranium over the next few months. But it all started with boots on the ground. It all started with digging up those boulders, trying to figure out where they came from, and then finding where they came from. So in this case, us finding a lithium-bearing pegmatite would be the first step to hopefully greatness.
Now, more broadly, lately we've been seeing automakers investing directly into producers or potential producers. And you've also got the US government, Canadian government, for example, $13 billion into VW most recently. So how would you describe, and getting back to that, the lithium gold rush, how would you describe the momentum and the newness of it and this current cycle of lithium awareness and enthusiasm?
Well, the government support is crucial. The provincial governments and the federal government in Canada, they're all coming to the table with tax incentives for investors, and that's really big. They're definitely supporting. For example, the James Bay lithium deposit has the endorsement of the federal government to become a mine. They're at ribbon cutting ceremonies with Volkswagen in Ontario for a battery plant. This is where the world is going. If we find North American supply, this is where it's domestic. This is the whole point. We don't want to be held hostage by other countries. Look what just happened in Chile. They're nationalizing the lithium business. I'm afraid to look at the prices of the producers down there. But I've always said in South America, you cannot trust. You don't know what's going to happen next. Here in North America, there is some certainty about your rights, about the claims that you staked, and what you find is not going to be expropriated or confiscated by someone. So all of this is very important, having this government support and this certainty that leads to these safe jurisdictions to work in.
As far as shareholders and the stock, you said that ALX Resources shareholders usually fall into two camps: uranium first and battery metals first. And so, is that changing at all, or is it pretty intractable? How do you deal with that to persuade certain investors that we're on the right track here with what we're doing?
Well, I like that word intractable, because from what I see, our uranium shareholders, they have had successes in the past, say in that huge boom that started in 2003, and for 5 years there was a lot of money made by people in the uranium business. I was part of UX Corporation, and we went from an 8-cent stock to when I left it was $7.50. So people have these fond memories, and uranium is exciting when it's found. Certainly, when you look at what's happened with Patterson Lake, with Arrow, NextGen, ISO Energy, there's still money to be made there in all these companies making discoveries. I think it's just a more mature, not that the younger people are immature, but it's a mature, older group of investors, whereas lithium investors tend to be, I think, younger. They're more tuned into the electrification process, that we're in this transition period. They are very sensitive to environmental issues, and that's why they've taken an interest in lithium. So I really think it's kind of not a generation gap, but there is a difference in age between the uranium bugs and the new lithium bugs.
It's interesting that you break it down that way. That's fascinating. Now let's wrap it up here by looking at the model and the potential for discovery at ALX Resources and the stock itself as well. No investor wants to be the one who likes a certain company but never gets into it and then sees it explode when there is a discovery. So would you say at the levels that your stock is at right now that it may be close to a no-brainer to at least have to set aside some money, because there is potential for some pretty good news flow?
Well, there's a saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. And when I look back at times in my career when it was dark, in UX, being at 8 cents, getting a call from a New York investor, James Passon, who wanted to invest in us out of the blue. It was like, wow, we got a phone call. Well, he was selling that stock at over $3 a couple of years later and made a lot of money for his fund. Yes, it takes temerity. It takes courage when prices are where they are to step in and go, this looks like a buy. We're on the verge of going out and looking for lithium-bearing pegmatites. If we're successful, I don't think we'll trade at this level. I think that there will be appreciation in the stock. So it takes a decision by an investor to boldly go where other people may not be going. And the rewards, it's a risk-reward scenario. You take that risk, and that's what happened in all the discoveries I've been involved in.
I really enjoyed this, Warren. Good luck with everything. We'll be following, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure.
Warren Stanyer, Chairman, CEO at ALX Resources.